Good morning, everyone. Last week we were working on this twist application. Just make sure I'll have to move OBS over to the other screen. Whoops! Helps if I actually open the lid, hey? The perils of live streaming. Move that over there, hey? There we go. Look at that. Much better. Okay. Last week we were looking at how to do this invite select box where you type in the user's name and then it fills it out and then you're able to invite users. So you should be able to do like twist fetcher and that should invite the other user. The invite is sent, but it's a couple of things that we should look at for this screen. So there's kind of three things on my agenda today. The first thing is that the select box should not contain usernames of users who are already invited. So if the name appears over here on the right, then they shouldn't reappear here. The second thing is that once an invite's been selected, the user should automatically appear in the readers list. It doesn't happen until I refresh the page. So twist fetcher now appears here. So readers list should reload automatically when an invite has been sent. I'll just close that sidebar there. So those are the first two things, and then the third thing is kind of what I've been referring to on Twitter as the unparlorification of the invite feature. What I mean by this is that Parler's notoriously well known for having bad security practices, having all their information leaked, and that was very funny. It's almost like Four Seasons Total Landscaping, but for internet information security. I thought it was quite hilarious. The other thing that we should do with twist here is that we shouldn't allow, not all users should be allowed to send invitations, only the authors of the books. So like if I am an author of a book and I invite you to be a reader on the book, then you shouldn't be able to invite like all of your friends to access a book that I'm trying to sell and make money off. So really only I should be the person who has access to the screen, and then you shouldn't be able to see the invite link. So it's kind of like 3A there, which is like 3A, which is, if we go back to this page, this has the invite. Oh, and I'm going to move that over to, oh, I'm so ready for this, as you can tell. Let's close that, close that. All right, 3A is like the invite a reader link here should not appear. So invite a reader link should not appear if not an author. Okay, and I'm just having some issues with YouTube and streaming at the moment. Just a second. We should be okay. I need to change network. I'll be right back. YouTube is reporting that we're having some issues with my connection. It's because it's just on the wrong internet connection. So y'all should be getting a better internet connection now. That's all good. So yeah, make sure that's on the right network. Cool. So these are kind of the three things that I want to get done today. So first thing is that the select box should not contain usernames of users who have already been invited. So if we go here and we type radar, this should not appear, and the other user is twist fetcher. That should not appear. Only users that don't exist in the book. The second thing is that this readers list should have automatically updated to show kind of, we do have that green text that's like, hey, your invitation has been sent successfully, like this. But what would be better as well as having this is to have it automatically show up here. And I want to make sure that list is sorted in some probably alphabetical order too. So maybe 2A readers list should be sorted alphabetically. It's an easy fix. So yeah, that's the kind of the stuff that we want to get done today. You know what? I'm going to chuck this over in Bear because BS Code will lose our notes. Whoop, there we go. All right. So we've got that there. All right. So the first kind of thing we want to do here is that we don't want the this users search list to have those users that have already been readers of the book. Now, the way that we can do that is kind of two separate things. There is the invite index, invitation index. This is the kind of parent component. So I'll bring that over there. I'll put that over there and put that over there. So we have our browser on the left and we have our editor on the right here. We can see here that this is a readers component and the invite form. So this is kind of this is the invite form here on the left, and we can see that if we open up the development tools, go to components and kind of hover over this, eventually you'll find somewhere buried amongst all this stuff is invitations and then wrapped invite form. That's the component that invite form here exports. The other thing that gets exported is wrapped readers, which is query wrapper is the wrapper component around that, which allows us to do a query to load the readers. That gives us the information that we need for the readers out of this component, but we don't really have the information for the readers in the invite form where we need it at the moment. So when we load this invite form, there are a couple of things that we do already when we're loading this form. We run a query here, which gets us the book ID and title query. And I reckon this is kind of the place where we could do that extra query to load the reader's data. The other alternative that I was thinking of as well before I started this today, was that we could do something that's like, we could have a parent component, this parent component load all the readers for the book and pass them along to the readers component here, as well as the invite form. The reason for not wanting to do that is that I kind of want to keep the logic for the invite form and how it chooses what users to display all kind of within that same component and not have it for both of these components. So that's the kind of prelude to this discussion, this feature stuff we're doing today. What I'm going to do is my usual thing of starting a timer for 90 minutes, and we'll see how far we can get in 90 minutes. Otherwise, I lose track of time and just keep talking. And, I've got other stuff that needs doing today. So let's see how far we can get in 90 minutes. Hey, let's go. So we should be wrapping up at about 12:25 according to this timer. So yeah, invite form here is currently loading book ID and title query. Now this query, if we open up the sidebar here, I've been defining queries in the same file that they have been that they used in. So this first query is book ID and title, but really what we want as well out of this is the readers. So if we look over in the readers component, we can see that we're just getting them out with this extra readers query bit here. And I think if we added it here in this query, we could say, this one is now book ID, title, and readers. And that will give us all the information we need. So we've got ID and title, and we've got the currently existing readers. Then later on, when we do this users query, we can kind of take this list and subtract this list of readers, and then we only get the new readers who have been I'm going to pause there for a moment because, like, what if somebody types here and they're not checking this list? Like, what do we want to display if this is saying no options? So if I do like, I don't know, Brian. Some people call me Brian. It says no options. Well, but I want to invite Brian. I'm looking at this select box, but I'm not looking at this list. So maybe we have like an indicator here, like, oh no, Brian's already been invited, you doofus. But I was going to say let's add it underneath the select box here, but this button and this text kind of gets hidden with this no option, so we may need to add it like above. Interesting. Okay, well, we'll have a think about that. For the moment, we've now changed that query to this. When we run our little yarn GQL codegen, this is going to regenerate the GraphQL types file, and that means that this function is no longer going to exist. See, it says use book ID and title query is not exported from blah, because it's not that, it's now readers. Use book ID, title, and readers query. There we go. The reason that that query got renamed, so it used to be use book ID and title query, and hang on a moment. Yeah, it used to be kind of these two things that got exported. It's now use book ID, title, and readers. It's because I renamed this query here, and that's the name that GraphQL, the codegen code, uses to generate the function names. So we're going to get rid of that. The other thing this got rid of was book ID and title query. That's the kind of data type that informs us what the shape of the data is. So book ID, title, and readers query is the thing we want to export here. That then gives us the right information. So with our invite form, we now have a book which if we hover over book here, we can see it contains ID, title, and readers. So it's got all the information we need. And then in order to pass that down, we can say book readers is data book readers. And that's now going to be in the invite form. Next issue is the invite form doesn't have book readers. So let's add book readers here. Book readers is, what type is it? Well, it's kind of an array of users, but because it is coming from book ID, title, and readers query, we need it to be in the right shape that query expects. What we are getting out of this is GitHub login and name, but the readers field here returns users, and users can have IDs, and they can have, I think, email addresses as well. So the way we do that here is we say type readers, and we say this, and we want to, you know what, I'm going to borrow something from an older bit of code here. It's kind of this sort of thing where I want to get out. First things first, I want just the book. I don't know if I was doing this earlier. No, as far as I can see. From this, we want to extract out the book, ID, title, and readers query. This thing. Oh, no. The top one. Yeah, that one. So book, ID, title, and readers query here. That can return one of two types. It can return a book, or it can return a permission denied error. In this case, when we have a book type, what we're saying here is we're extracting from the book ID, title, and readers query type the key inside of that called book, and we only want that book key when the type name is book, not permission denied. So we're going to only get the one that's book, and then from that we want the book kind of readers. So we're kind of narrowing down the type. The type, this big query type, is the shape of all the data that gets returned from the query. First, it's got this type name query, it's got book, and it can return book, and a book can either be a book or it can be this permission denied error. That's what we're kind of using for authorization stuff at the moment in Twist. We want it to be this top one, this book, which is what we use extract TypeScript's extract utility. I don't know what to call it. Extract type? Not sure. Type extractor. And the thing that we want to pull out of that book type once we have it is the key also nested inside of that called readers. And so that's the shape that we get back. So we get back this readers thing here, which first of all looks like an object, but then we look at this square brackets in the end, and that's an array of readers. So it's an array of objects that correspond to these types exactly. And that way then, by using these same types from the query, we make sure that we're actually using the right data. I could be really lazy here and be like array of objects that take a login and a login that's a string. But you know what I'm doing wrong here? It's not called login. It's called GitHub login there, and it's also called GitHub login here. So you see the type here, I've made a mistake that doesn't match what the query is returning. But TypeScript is okay, and it's all compiled fine, apart from this error down here because it's returning the wrong type. So what we should be doing here is just trying to use as much of the automatically generated types as possible to ensure that the type checks are successful and preventing us from making silly little errors. Okay, so in this component now we should have, let's have a look at this little component. We have invite form here. We're getting through a list of book readers that are being passed through already. So these are the two readers, and we got that shape of the data there. Now what we want to do here is kind of ignore the ones where the, I don't know if GitHub, I guess GitHub login is kind of unique enough in this case. In some other applications I might like try and uniquify based on ID, but really what we want to do is kind of exclude all of these users here. This load options function is what gets called when we type something into here, and then it presents us with a list of options. So we kind of want to, this data users thing, we want to take the book readers and kind of filter. We don't want the users. So we want to define this as const uninvited. Ooh, you know what? Inside that data is where we want it. Const uninvited users equals data users filter, where the user GitHub login const reader logins. So what we're trying to do here is like to get the book readers let me see here. We want the reader GitHub login. We want all of the reader logins, and we want to say like filter where it's not included in that. So the reader logins includes that. No, I'm going to close that sidebar a bit. So we want to say uninvited users. Get all the users that are returned from typing in this box, and filter those users to only the ones where the reader logins, the users that have been invited, does not include the user's GitHub login. And then we should be able to get the right users back out of there. So if we say uninvited users, we now have, we'll type radar in here and it'll say no options. Type twist fetcher in here, no options. I don't know if I have any other users. I think that's it in local dev. We will have a look in poster code. Hello again, poster code. Remember me from last week? Books, development users. No, it appears we only have 2 at the moment. So let's try and we have permissions. That's the one I want. I'm going to remove, I don't know what that null one is. That's a bit strange. Should be null. All right. I'm going to remove those 2 columns, rows, and that'll remove twist fetcher. So if I type radar here, no options, but if I type twist fetcher, all good. So that filtering seems to be working quite well. What I was suggesting before is kind of like, oh, thank you, poster code. I will get a license soon, I promise. What I was suggesting before is like, if somebody goes to invited reader that's already been invited here, they're looking where their eyes are looking is kind of this select box here. They're not looking over here. Like I can tell right now when I'm looking at this thing on the left-hand side, my eyes barely see this thing on the right-hand side. So what we kind of want to do here is like, if the user's, sorry, if the user has already been invited, maybe like say, hey, dude, just be careful because this user has already been invited. So maybe we could be like, I don't know, like no options. Has the user already been invited? Is there a way to like customize that message or, let me think some more. I'm just not sure. React select props. This tells us the React select props documentation is great because it tells us what props we can pass. So no options, text, no options message. So I mean, what we could do in one of these cases is like, where is that async select here? So no options message. Could not find a user. Have they already been invited? Like something like that, but I think even that's like a bit long. No overload matches this call. Uh-oh. String is not assignable to blah. Oh, it's a function, huh? Takes an input value, okay. So this should be a function which takes something and then returns. I guess it's like, couldn't find a user with blah in their name. Yeah, so could not find the user. Have they already been invited? Well, I haven't typed anything. Yeah, this is a difficult one to kind of think about how to tackle it. So, okay, we know we can do that. That's one of the potential options. The other option is to, as I was saying before, like display a message like here, like strong class, what is it, text red 600, I think, plus name, right. User has already been invited. Yeah, I don't know, like if that, you know what? I think we're gonna go with just the no options message here because that just seems like a simpler solution. Called, and this is a function that takes input value. Could not find. You know what, we'll do input value here, and that's gonna, because we're interpolating, we need to convert those to that, and I got an extra bracket on the end of that line. Okay. All right. So we've got. Oh, that's not right. Could not find object because the takes a string. Okay. Well, input value, parameter input value. Well, it's It's an object that returns a key. Oh, yeah, okay. So what this is saying here is jump back to here. This is saying input value is the name of the argument is input value, but then it's an object that contains a key called input value, and that's a string. So we need to take input value out of that, like that. There. Could not find blah, empty quotes. So could not find radar. Have they already been invited? Twist. Yeah, I mean, that's not happy with it, but for now, I think that'll get us at least through this starting of our, you know what, I'm going to spit that out to the side so you didn't see all my other notes there too. Alright, so today is 21st Jan 2021, goodbye 2020. Select box should not contain users, names of users who have already been invited. Yeah, okay, fine. You know, in the interest of moving on, I am going to mark that one as done. Okay, and what we'll do here is I want to make a little commit. So what we'll say here is, yep. Okay, and those are just the type definitions that get updated. I don't know why styles has changed. Aha, I was fixing some other stuff. We'll come back to that in a second. Only show usernames for users who have not already been invited. And fix opacity on note buttons. That was another change I was doing a little bit earlier on. Okay, so the other thing we wanted to do here today, there's two things, at least on this little invitation form. The readers list should reload automatically when an invite has been sent, and readers list should be sorted alphabetically. So I'm curious, I am very curious, if we just hacked into the database here, like a pro hacker, we added some users in. Let's just add in like me too at ryanbigg.com and whatever, and that has to be a now and a now, and me too. So me too should be, or you know what, me too would be the GitHub login. So we kind of want to sort by this thing here, and we'll do a at ryanbigg.com now, a. So the list should go a, me too, radar, and twist fetcher, in that order. All right, so we got some users there, and now we go here and we go me too. There it is. Invite me too. The list doesn't automatically reload. No, it's not sorting. That's all right. So A, there's A. What happened before then? I didn't load A initially. A. Could not find A. Okay, that was strange. I will have a think about that one too. Yeah, this seems to just be ordering them in the kind of order that they were in. So the sorting is the easiest thing to work out first. So the sorting is over in readers here. And we're getting back a list of readers from the readers query over here. And what we want to do here is to just kind of sort reader, you know what, there's kind of multiple ways of doing this. So I love, like, what I'm kind of laughing about here is that the sort in JavaScript is very interesting in that it kind of sorts in whatever goddamn way it feels like doing. Yeah, here's a great example of it. So rather than sorting numbers like in the conventional order, you know, you might expect like 1, 4, 21, 30, 100,000. It sorts it kind of. Excuse me, somebody's printing something. That's a shock. Well, guest starring my printer. Okay, so we got this array is sorted weirdly, but the months of the year are also sorted in alphabetical order there. So we've got December, February, Jan, month, and we can do a compare function. So we can say in sort, you can sort by the values of these things, and that's kind of the thing that we're going to use here. So we kind of want to sort by the GitHub login of those users. That's why I want to open up the MDN docs here for you. So the readers that we get back are this list of readers here, and then we want to kind of have the sorted readers. The sorted readers are the readers, and then we want to do sort. Hello, printer. Yes, do you have something to say? A and B, and we want A GitHub. You know what? Reader 1, Reader 2. Give them real names. Hey, Reader 1, GitHub login. Oh, what am I doing wrong here? I can't believe it. What? Yes, it does. The readers here is an array, so sort. Huh. Something so trivial. What is readers if not an array? Huh. You know what? That's you can tell I'm a programmer because of my amazing ability to reason about sort. Yeah. I use console log. See, it's an array. Don't try and fool me, people. It's this reader's type that's being returned here. Huh? Alright. Something's gone. Something's fucky. Property sort does not exist on TypeScript. Sort of like that. Well, it doesn't matter. Sure not. You know what? That should probably be ES6. Alright. Come back here. Reader's sort. I'm so surprised. Okay. Yeah, okay. Like. It shouldn't matter, like. So bizarre. It's alright, we'll figure this out. That's what I'm doing. Alright. I might leave that one alone for a bit. Sorting brings me down, man. That's not cool. Const unsorted readers. Really, what we should be able to do is like this: reader 1, reader 2, reader 1, GitHub login, reader 2, GitHub login, like that, or like GitHub login probably will be, that's probably more sensible. That's of a reader's type. Oh, that's a 0 of that. So that's, oh my god, that's so strange. Alright, I'm gonna ignore that for now. That is very weird. What we want to do here, the other thing that we wanted to do here is that readers list should automatically reload when an invite has been sent to indicate that a user has been invited. So let's switch tack to that. Because users are already existing in the permissions table here. delete those. Don't know why poster code is so big. And we'll delete those now. Okay, so those users don't exist. So what we want to do when we do this invite form thing is we want to refetch a query. That is a option that you can provide to the Apollo functions, and the Apollo functions will then trigger the query to be refetched, and that's here, refetch. Excuse me. Things are going ding. I think it's one of the options you can provide to here, refetch. Yep, refetch queries. And the query that we want to refetch is the query that we use for loading readers, which is this readers query. So that's just the name of the query we want to refetch. There, like that. And what this will make, refetch queries string is not assignable to this because it needs to be an array. What this will do for our invite user mutation is that Apollo will know to reload the readers query. So if we do A here, that is very strange that it's not loading. Me too. They haven't already been invited. Alright, what is happening today? Me too. No, they haven't already been invited. Because I deleted the users too, didn't I? Ha! Whoops. That was silly. Alright. Me too, ryanbigg.com. Now for that, now for that. Me too, me too. Yeah, I should have just deleted the permission records, not the users themselves. So me too. There we go. So we got a user, and we click invite, that, and now that user automatically appears in that readers list. That's the refetch queries stuff here, and you can use that. Notice that I'm not doing that. I don't have to do that in the parent component. I don't have to do that in this, not that one, in invite index here. I don't have to do it here and say like, invite form, when a mutation happens in that, then run the readers query again. I can just use that name because that query's name is unique across the system, and I can say refresh the query readers and it will know to do the right thing. So that is done. You know what I'm going to do is a thinking face here for this one. That's so strange. All right. Tick. Okay, so we've got kind of the ball rolling on the first couple of things. Now, the last thing is kind of a bigger doozy, I guess, of a thing, where we have, we don't really have in Twist a hierarchy of users. So we just have users that get invited to a book, and then that just happens to be the way it is, that all users are equal under the eyes of Twist. So what we want to do here is to have some sort of way of uniquely identifying users and saying, no, this user is an admin for this book. Fortunately for us, we have this really cool permissions table that exists here that says this user and this book have this relation at the moment. What we could do here is add one extra column and say this user and book relation is that this user is an author on this book. And then if the user is an author on the book, then what you can say from that is that the user has permission to invite people, has permission to open and close notes, and things like that. What I mean by the open and close notes stuff is that users themselves at the moment can go in and close notes, but probably they shouldn't be able to do that. And yeah, okay, so we've got some permissionsy stuff to look at today. So that's what we'll do. I'll be right back. I just need to refill this water bottle and we will kick that off. So be right back, people. Thanks. And I'm back. Did you miss me? Probably. Alright, so what we want to do here is kind of have another column in that permissions table that defines the relationship between users and the books that they're on. At the moment we just have this list of readers, but we don't really have a way of like saying, oh, this reader is an author, or having some sort of way of, yeah, identifying that. That's interesting. Okay, so we want to go into the back end here, and we want to create a new migration to add another column to that table. So migration. Oh, look, you can tell I've been doing some Rails stuff before too. Add author column, add author to permissions, we call this. I don't know if we don't really have a need for other layers of permissions yet. So, I mean, like author to permissions, we don't really have like sub authors or editors or that sort of thing here. Way we've done this before is we've done like an alter table here. So that's the sort of syntax we use for ROMs migrations. You might think of this as similar to Rails, and it indeed is. The column we want to add is author, and we want to know if that author by a boolean, and the default for that column is false. So we then run dbmigrate, same as everything else. And it's not a boolean, it needs to be true class. Or false class. I think it doesn't matter. Alright, so we've got author, looks like they're defaulting to false, which is excellent. Okay, so then the association needs to we need to have like some way of saying, let me just toggle that over to true there. And maybe on this list we need to have like a way of indicating that a user is an admin, like a, I don't know, an A or an admin, I mean an author, an A flag or something. So let me show you what I mean. Let's just mess about here for a bit. So the kind of way of like, we want to say like author. We can sort this list by the by the factor of if they're an author or not. We already tried sorting the list once today, but I'm not going to sort it again, I don't think. So we could have like a way of indicating it like that, or you know, you could add in some fancy span class name, text color, text green 600 or something like that, using that Tailwind styling. So we could have like they're an author and make that what is it, text bold? I always get that one wrong. Is font bold? Yeah, font bold. So you can be like, hey, that one's an author. Yeah, I don't know, something along those lines of like indicating they are that way. In order to get that data to appear though, we don't, like on this readers object, there's only GitHub login and name. There isn't a what association this user has to this book returned on this object. So we'll work on that. The readers contain the GitHub login and the name for this book, but they don't, what this association doesn't return us is it doesn't return the association between the user and the book themselves. Sorry, just stretching here, one moment. What we want to do is like say, is this person an author? And we can query it like this, author, singular. And that query then will go back to GraphQL and say, hey, GraphQL, can you tell me the information of like, if this reader is an author? And GraphQL will be like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. What are you talking about? So we have a reader's spec, I think, for that already. Over here, yes. So we're going to have a play around with this. So this is our test in the back end for running a query. So this is all stubbing out users and returning information based on those users. And then we want to be like, hey, this author field gets returned, and then the user that gets returned, we want to say like, yes, they are an author. So like that should be equal to true. That's good. So then that user gets returned. You know what? Do we need a second user returned? I guess in this, I think this was the test we were querying on based on a particular, oh no, it looks like it's just on a particular book for readers. Yes. So we're only returning a single user at this point in time. Let's return both users and we'll create a third user. User should not appear. User 3. So what we want to make sure this test does is like Sharon. I always like using Sharon as an example. My wife. So the readers count should be 2, and we expect the readers. We can't do a not to include user 3 here because the shape of the user 3 data is not JSON. The data that we get back from readers here is JSON, and I wish I could hover over this and show you it, but because it's Ruby, I can't do that. So we want to say expect readers any. I don't know what to do with this one. Any reader GitHub. Yeah. You know what? Expect readers map. And I can't do reader. I can't do a symbol to proc here. So reader ID, we're going to get out the ID thing here and say like not to include user 3 ID. So this is like all the users should be returned are the first two users, user 1 and user 2, and then user 3, the ID here should not exist. So the readers first, you know what we're going to do, so one reader is we're going to do readers find, because the data we noted in the query here, it's not necessarily always going to be returned in the same order. It's going to be in a random, well, whatever order the database really feels like giving us the data back in. So it's unpredictable. The way that we can predict it is we can just match on based on this stuff. So like user, the ID here. Other thing here is that these are going to be numbers, but the ID here is going to be strings. We need to do 2s on that. And then the readers first that we do here is user 1 reader. And then we'll do the same thing for user 2 reader, pretty much. So where we have user 1 in this code, we do user 2. And then the GitHub login should be, what did we have it up here as? We had it as twist, and the name was twist books. And the user should not be an author. So when we get that data back from the query, the query should say no, that user is not a reader. So book readers spec. This is the one under spec twist web GraphQL queries. It's the top one. It's not the one that does the real requests. It's the one that does the fake requests. And this is now returning us undefined method count for no class. You know what this is? I reckon the third week we've ran into this issue where this query is returning, when we do subject run here, it's doing something where it's like, this is returning some errors. Now this is kind of the third week we've run into this, and I think this is probably time. We keep kind of bumping our head on this, so let's go off a little bit on a tangent here, and we're gonna have, I think we had a request helper here which ran, here, so we've got a request helper in our code which runs a query automatically for us, but what we don't have is like a way of shortcutting this and being like, hey, FYI, your query is returning errors. So what I will do here, I think, is what I want the API to be really is like run query with a query, which is this, and then it kind of, you know what, run query is the result, and then query is defined as a let, variables are defined as a let, and context is defined as a let, and then it just knows to run those things. So this is kind of the same sort of thing, but what we do is like query is already defined as a let, but then let variables is this. And then when I want this, when this returns any errors, I want to be like, no, your test has failed because your query is actually running and it's getting some errors back. And maybe one day we'll do something about that, but like handle those errors in some sort of graceful fashion. But right now, context is this current user, which returns current user. So this run query method has, I am going to move it out of this class because we're probably going to need it somewhere else, but I'll just put it here for now. So it's going to be this So it'll be query, query, variables, variables, context, context. And there we have it. That is basically going to do the same sort of thing that we did before. So we're still, if we run it again, we'll still get the errors back. Just need some extra water here. Okay. Still get these errors back. I'm still going to run in the same issue, which is like undefined method count. But the difference here is that we've kind of got the result here. I'm going to say like I think the result has an errors key on it. Let's double check that. Result errors. What does it have? Oops. Huh. Typing too quickly. So yeah, it has some errors. So what we can say is like if result errors any fail. Is that how you fail an aspect test? Fail. Yeah, you could raise. I mean, fail and raise. Flunk. Or fail with. Sort of fail with, yeah. Fail matches fail. I mean, yeah, sure. Fail with result errors. Let's see what that looks like. So if we're getting back any errors at all, we don't want it to continue past that point, because everything here is kind of assuming that it's just going to work fine. This is better so many times. All right, so we're expecting class object there. So aspect fail with. Come on, RubyDoc. See, that's it. One of the issues of being in Australia is that like shit's slow sometimes. Right, so flunk. I suppose it'd be a flunk method, so let's see what flunk does. Yeah, no, not happy with that. I know there's pending, but pending's not quite what we want. You know what? Button apply. Where does pending come from? If we get the source of pending, which we can do with this, we can do source location. Look, it comes from aspect core pending. Very helpful. Pending is that. Then the skip, but it's like mark fix, mark pending. Not quite. Gems aspect. GitHub aspect core. We're just going to have a look, dive into aspect core here and have a look what is going on. So if there's a pending file, I'm guessing there's a oh, they renamed the branch. Cool, good people. Pending. This one. Is there a fail or a success? No. Fail, but fail not implemented yet. Well, that's got like a text. That's a bad example. Push it fails. It fail sync. Okay. Well, I guess the thing that we're passing here in the fail is not really a yeah. Fail and raise, I think, are the same thing. The thing that we're passing is this object, not necessarily like. So really, probably what we want to pass is like message, or like the first. Yeah, it's probably more like it. Okay. I want to like fail, result, errors, 0, message. All right. Yeah, field author does not exist on this, so I don't like it being a runtime error. And this is just going to raise an exception. So why? Like we could do a query exception, standard error, and raise query exception like that. Oops. And I'm going to move this stuff out, promise. Yeah, so we get like a query exception here, so we get like this. Yeah, all right. I'm happy with that. So this stuff can live over in, where are we loading this other stuff from? So we've got something over here in support. We've got, it's the kind of directory I was looking for before, but I couldn't see it immediately. Ah, here. So GraphQL helpers.rb. So we've got this stuff here. I'm going to define this as a module GraphQL helpers. Define the class inside that, and then we want to do aspect configure do c include GraphQL helpers into. I don't really know if this has got anything that's got like a tag on it. This is a twist web GraphQL query book readers. I'm hesitant to include it into everything like this because it doesn't need to exist in everything, so it needs to kind of only be included into certain paths. No, not the matcher, the rspec include config. Rubydoc, lovely. Type requests, not quite what I want there. Filters. Into directory. Sort of. You know what we can do is we can go here when we're running this sort of query thing. So this, hopefully that file should be being no. Spec helper. I see, it needs to be required. GraphQL helpers and GraphQL. I mean, say like GraphQL true, and the mark each test we need it as GraphQL. I mean, I'm fine with that. That's a fine compromise. So this should be like GraphQL true. The other thing we can do is like check out what the metadata is for these tests. I think we can access that in this like maybe there's a metadata example. Right. I know there's a way. Yeah, I thought. Oh, you're gonna do the do example. Right. Right. We'll do that. And then we'll have an example variable, which should be accessible example.metadata. All right, so this is the description is that. Do we have a location? We have GraphQL true, which is helpful. We have a parent. I mean, there's like no, I don't see like an easy way of getting. GraphQL true seems to be like the best way of getting that data out. So whenever we need to use those helpers, we use GraphQL true, and then we'll have that. So this is saying field author does not exist on that type. That's fine. That's the issue that we're tackling at the moment. So what I've done here is we've moved that stuff out to put the do back. A separate helper run query, and now this won't allow this part of the test to continue because it's failing at line 89, and we can see it's failing right here. That's excellent. Good. Okay, so the type user that's being returned from our API, that's the kind of next step. So we want this type here to return this one. We want this type to have a field called author, and we want it to return a Boolean, and it's not going to be never going to be null. Now, the difficult part with this is that we want it to only be, we kind of want, see, author here is only relevant if the parent object, so that the kind of structure that's being returned here that we kind of want is this. So we've got readers with an array, and then underneath that we have this author thing, which is either true or false. Okay, So book readers, author, true or false. Now this author, true or false is dependent on what this book is and who the reader is. And so it's only relevant based on that particular little bit of context there. So the way we get access to that, I'll show you here in GraphQL, is as an object. That's not helpful, is it, in Ruby? Because everything's an object. But no, the object is this. This is the current object that we're accessing, so we now have access to the user. And there's also a context which gives us the, I thought object gave us the, oh, maybe, what am I thinking of then? I'm trying to think of what we're getting back out of this. We're getting back out of it a series of readers that are yeah, we're not really getting the right amount of data out. I was trying to think we could get access to the parent object here, but I think the parent object that I'm thinking of is object 2h. We've got a whole bunch of stuff. I don't think we have access to the book here in this case. You know what we'll do is keys on that and sort. No, we don't have access to that parent book object. So we kind of want a way of determining here if the user is an author or not. And all right, can't return non-nullable field. Well, for now we can do false, but really what we want to be returning is like a list of users that have that are authors. So let's look back at that book type. Book here is returning a list of users. I'm thinking like maybe this, I don't even know why that timeline's there. This user type and the readers that are returned, this finding all the users by the book, maybe is returning the wrong shape of data. Maybe it should be returning like a book reader type with the whether or not they're an author on the book. Yeah, I mean that's... we're going to be able to do that elegantly somehow. I mean, if it's just Rails, you just mash queries together until it works, right? But because this is not Rails, and we only have 40 minutes to go, okay. So we're getting, you know what? Let's look at this from first principles sort of thing. So the data that we want is existing in this permissions table. We kind of want the user ID, the book ID. We know this information. We know this information. And the information we want is this third column here. The way we get that information is that we kind of have it all at this particular point in time. We have all the users. We know the book we're getting it for. And then we want that information out of there. So we kind of want to return probably not exactly there. And not exactly... No, what I'm going to do is I might just do like this. So we do like a reader repo. And we say by book object ID. And what we get back out of that then is this whole series of readers. Like we get this reader object, which is basically a user, but it's got this extra author field on it. And then that determines whether or not the user is an author. So I'm just taking a little break for now, and I'll come back in a second. Just be right back. All right, I'm back. So what we were looking at is this way to get kind of the user information here out. We have the users, we have the books, we just need to get the reader information out. For this, we kind of need to do kind of two queries, I think, to the database. I'm just wondering, like, if there is a way of doing it in ROM. Oh, that is an interesting question. So what we have here is we have bin console. Then in order to access a repository, hopefully it's still in my history here. Because I'm lazy, there it is. You get the user repo. So from this user repo, we have a kind of way of accessing the association, the relation by doing users. And this kind of gives us the way into accessing this relation and the data set underneath it. So when we're loading the users, we only want the users who are related to that book in the user repo here, which you get by doing this query, users by book ID. Oh, I mean, we need an actual book ID, hey? And we get back all of these users. So what we're getting back here is we're getting back all the users that have the access to the book at the moment. My problem with this query is that the users that are being returned here don't have the permission information required. They don't have that extra like author field on there. So that's the kind of thing that we want to look at now. I wonder if we can do like this joins. I know we have another example of this somewhere else. Join there, and we have it here. So what I want to join is the permissions table. And I want to join the ID column from the users table to the user ID column in the permissions table. And it's join. This is the information I want. So this is our change the query to do an inner join on the permissions table and get us that bit of information out. And then the users, in fact, I reckon this query was already doing that. That looks awfully familiar. Yeah, so this is the kind of thing, the information we want. So this is joining that information. It's getting us that information out anyway. So that's kind of the same sort of query that's doing. It's doing the, oh, you know what? It's user ID and ID is the right order. So this was doing permission ID where users is equal to user ID. It's not right. It should be permissions user ID is equal to user ID. So it's the permissions user ID column to the users ID column there. Now this query, if we ran it in our Postgres database, would get us the right information out. So if we do a SQL query, which is essentially select all from users, inner join permissions, where permissions book ID is 1, we get that information back out here. We get ID, email, encrypted password, creator, updated name, GitHub login, user ID, book, author. What we don't get yet is that author thing. We don't see that bit of information coming through here, and we don't get this user ID and book ID information coming back out. And I think the reason for that is how ROM's relations return information. So ROM relations, the kind of data we want just for the this one query to return a different kind of class. This is materializing it. I don't know if I want to materialize it in a specific way. There's this relation schemas here. I don't want to infer that. Yeah. Okay. I know there's different ways of doing kind of. Alright, so this has got like a combination. And that's going to get us at the projects there. So that's users relation combine. That's a users relation combining projects by ID to. Oh, I think that needs to specify when you have that association. Okay. That's a nested combine. All right. Adjusted combine. It's very, I feel like that's the thing that I want, but not quite. This has many for users. I want to return the right association. See, I'm learning this stuff the same as anyone else would be at the moment. All right, so we've got this combine thing. So we've got combine permissions, which requires the association to be defined. So permissions is not defined on this because we're not defining it here. So let's do schema users, and then I think it was, yeah, just associations. Associations permissions, and then we do that. No, it's not that. It is has many permissions, because it's a has and belongs to many. But right now, I just kind of want to grab that information out of there. So let's get out of here for a second, and the information we want is the user repo. Come on now, there we go. So the user repo uses combined permissions. All right, so now we have that information that comes out of it. So this is now getting us the author information, and it's like on permissions. So we now have that permissions information being returned. I'm just not liking that it's still this user object, because the permission stuff there is like a reader object. It like needs to be like manipulated one more step further, right? You know, it's like, what other methods are on here? I know there's probably another way of like, before you do this, there's map with, which I remember map with. So map with ROM mappers. Map with my mapper. Sort of. It's like a map. Yeah, I felt like mappers might be the right thing. So we've got combining tasks, and we want to like, this is the username mapper, which takes users and does this username mapper. So this is kind of like the right, almost to the right shape. So what this is doing is like take users, pass it to the username mapper, and then for that, we only want the names out of that. So we want kind of like a ROM transformer map with my mapper. Yeah, sort of, mate, sort of. You know what? ROM transformer sounds about right. So registered build map. You know what? It's probably the first time we're going to need one of these things. Deep stringify keys map with this. Yeah, okay, so ROM transformer. So let's have a look at any examples of ROM transformer. So we've got ROM here, and then we're going to look at ROM transformer. Oh, and that's just going to be other documentation, I guess. That's renaming some keys and deep stringifying some keys. Okay. Mapping sounds about right. Like, this was similar to what I want to return, but I don't want to return, like, this auto struct is being built, auto struct with custom classes, and then, ooh, that's using, okay, that's using a different struct. Yeah, see, this is kind of the thing that I want. Like, you get back a user, but you're querying, the query that you're doing is this, and then you kind of get back the right information from the struct. Mapping to custom objects, similar-ish, yeah. Map to. I reckon like map to is probably what I want. That's the function I was trying to think of earlier. So let's try reader here. We will define this as reader ROM struct. Now readers have the same kind of shape. They have that GitHub login, but they also have that author attribute. And what we'll do here is author is the types of Boolean. I think that's right. And that's that and that. Okay. So reader is now going to be like GitHub login name and whether or not they're an author. The users here, when we return the list of, really helpful to not have a context here. You know what I'm going to do is map to reader here. So when we get this information out, we're going to be like map to this class reader. See what that does. Hey. Oh, man. Try types. Excuse the burping. Try types boolean. Bool. Yeah, it's bool. I should know that. I live in the bool. One bool. All right, so we got that users repo, and then the thing that we do to get that information, so the users, the repo, this one, is by book. So we go user repo by book 1. And that gets us this twist reader new author is missing in hash input. So the information that is getting out of this, you know what, it gets permissions, doesn't it? It doesn't get. So try types has an array somehow. Array with member. Yeah, okay, like that. So it has attribute permissions, and that's like types array of, and then permission is what it has. It's actually getting back, and this is kind of the point where you should probably be writing a spec for the repository, making sure it works. So let's stop that. That's not right. Twist. I have repositories and I have note repository and I have this. So what I want to do is user repo spec, user repo by book. Gets information, gets author information for our book. Now, the thing that we want to do here is kind of this sort of bizzo, where we want a user repo here and a permission repo, and we create a permission repo. And then from a book, we create that. We've got a book. We then want a user, and we want the information between them. So we want user repo create. I think we can just do name radar, or we'll see what happens. And we want the permission to happen. So we do permission repo create, and we want that to be like book. Book ID is book.id. And that line is going to run over user ID is user.id, and whether or not they're an author can be true in this case. Then the subject that we're calling it on, subject here for our test is user repo. You know what, we've already got that there, so we can go subject there. The subject by default in our spec tests is essentially the same as the described class, which is this .u. Subject by book, and we want, this is then the readers, and we expect readers first author to equal true. And that's really the information we want to get out of it. Now we don't have to keep restarting the console and testing our expectations. We have a test and we can rerun it, and if it happens to break later on, then we are all good. So the book that we're passing here, book should be book ID. Okay, and then the information we're getting back out is still not in the right shape, so that's okay there. What is the shape of that stuff? Well, if we were in TypeScript, we could hover over it and find out. But right now we are not in TypeScript, so the information we get out is this relations shape, which is not the right relation. It's not the right shape of data we want returned here. We are going to just close user repo and user repo spec, the two things that we are interested in. We want to map to and then do a 2a on the end of that. So this is like when you're loading this query, map to this thing, and then 2a is like actually do that query and get us the data back out. And apparently there are no authors for that query. That is weird. I would expect there to be. Users, but oh, you know what? I'm not actually calling those functions. Here, here, and here. All right. So we've got, yeah, that should be good. Return now. All right. reader nil class is invalid type for GitHub login, which is what the hell? Okay. Well, what information is this returning to A? Okay, GitHub login I guess can't be nil. Type is either string or nil, it seems. Alright. Fine. Okay. Permissions is missing in hash input, so when we're creating that user and we're trying to return that information, the user that's being returned by book doesn't have permissions on it, and the reason for that is we're not doing combine, so we need to do combine permissions to get that information out. And now we are getting the right information. So this is now the reader that we get back out of this is a reader object which has GitHub login and radar and permissions. And then the permission that we want is like determining if this user is a it's an author on this current book, but again we fall into that trap of like the data still is not in the right shape that we want it in. It's still in this we get back permissions. I mean, what we could do is just return the list of permissions and then check it on the front end. And that would probably be okay. But getting the front end to determine whether or not a user is like permitted to do anything. I hate that idea. I mean, it's the best idea that we had so far. So this is kind of like a reader is a user, but they also have this permissions thing. So what I mean by the idea that I hate is that we, instead of returning field author here, we return field permissions. And then we have that list of permissions that we return. When I'm agonizing about this sort of thing, my thoughts are just to try it and see if it works. Then if I'm still not happy with it, we can revisit it later on and come back to it. Maybe one day we'll come up with a better way of doing it. So just like in the interest of keeping, just keep swimming, just keep swimming. So really the author thing here is not necessarily the thing we want to return, right? I don't think we have a necessary a way of, I mean, we have a way of accessing it here when we're loading the readers initially. Oh man, and then the way of getting, yeah, I can't think of another way of doing it really, like, we get the readers out here, and we're not doing that anymore, we're going to just use a repo. It really should be called reader repo. Okay, we get a list of readers, and then on that list of readers is returned a permissions thing. So here we have all the information we want, and then the kind of structure that we want returned from that is whether or not they're a reader on the book, which we have here already. We can return all that information here. We have that. Okay. The great thing about this is that we can do, yes, we can do, we can do author there, because we have that all that information here. So we have readers here. Okay, I will show you what I mean. Binding the cry, and we have set up the right amount of information. You know what we will do here? Twist repositories user repo spec. I think just for that user repo spec, we'll come back here and we really don't want to author. What we care about is like permissions to not to be nil. Okay, so the kind of the readers that get returned by this by book query should have permissions on them, and if they don't, then that's a problem. We're going to expect readers first, to be a twist reader. So it's of a particular type and they have a permissions method on it. Now, that is excellent because when we go back to the book here and we have a list of readers here, well, the thing we want to return is basically everything in that reader's it's readers spec RB book, that one. The thing we want to return is like everything in the readers already. I know it doesn't already exist. Like, give me a break, people. User RB. Yeah, I'm still trying to query for author, aren't I? Because this needs to be a reader type. And we'll define a reader type at the same level as that, which is a reader. I think we talked about this in like week 1, maybe, defining a reader type that was special. Field author, which is a boolean, and it is never null. That and then returns that. Beautiful. Oh yes, it is defined, you silly thing. I think it just needs to be required somewhere. Objects. Objects book. Yeah. God knows why it's required there. That's a silly place for it. Should be defined in the query type, so it should be like here. And the thing we want is a reader. Put that at the bottom. Okie dokie. Add comment type. Wow, it ain't happy about stuff. Twist comment. I'm guessing because like those things might, yeah, okay. The mutations probably get loaded before queries because that is how it's defined here in schema. So like, it's not how it's defined there. Okay, I gotta sort out this require stuff. That's just a mess that I have to keep going in and find like add comment type. Well, kind of didn't, you know. I'm making it worse. Put that back there. The thing we want to just require here is that, I think. Oh my god. I really shouldn't have to require a bunch of this stuff. Reader type. Well, yes, indeed, I did mean that. You know what I probably didn't do? Is over here. No, over in here is rename that to reader type. Well, I did. Twist web GraphQL objects reader. Well, it's the same bloody thing. Book type, reader type. Well, where I'm using that is actually over in book type. Book RB over here in here. And it's require relative reader because it's the same scope. Multiple definitions for user. Well, no crap, Ola. Yeah, you know what I'm probably doing is there is probably ever in reader here. I'm not looking at. This should be reader and a reader. You know what, that's the require thing's probably something I should have looked at a long time ago, but right now I just haven't been doing it. This thing is still this one of the bad things about mocking stuff is that you're going to get the wrong data back when you do stuff like this. So this is returning users and user 2, but that's not the right information. It should be returning readers with permissions. So permissions, all right. The permissions are for the book with ID 1, the user ID is 1, and the author is true. Now for the other user, user 2, do they have the same permissions on the same book? Well, yes, they can read the book. The user ID is true, but they are not an author on that particular book. and user number 3, because we are returning the same amount of data everywhere, we will now do book 1, user ID 3, and whether or not they're an author, which is false. They are not an author of the book. So we're returning user 1. You know what we'll do is reader 1 and reader 2, and make sure that's all consistent everywhere. So anywhere we have user, actually reader here, and reader here. The variables that we should be expecting are readers, so we can probably do like reader 1 here, and that can be, oh no, because we're already using it. Yeah, reader 1 JSON. Reader 1. So we're expecting reader 1 JSON, and reader 2 JSON is then reader 2. And user 2 reader is now reader 2 JSON, and that should be okay. Just make sure I'm not referring to user 1 or user 2 anywhere. Now the information we're getting back out should be in that right shape, so it should now have those permissions stuff there. We'll see what's going on. So the readers we're getting back out are, look at that, they've got permissions, but the permissions don't have author on them. My guess is that that permission entity defined in our application doesn't have that extra attribute, which is author, and needs to be defined as a type bool. Now that will be the right shape indeed. So, whoops, we want those readers. The readers that we get back now are the right shape. So we've got readers with a GitHub login and permissions. The last thing we want to return here is kind of the very close, very good. Okay, GraphQL book RB. Then readers here, and we're going to do the great thing with GraphQL, as I'm trying to get to before, is that you can return an object, and you can return it in whatever shape you want. So reader GitHub login is reader.github login. And then you want to return their name, so their name is reader name. And then you want to return whether or not they're an author, and that is permissions, any permission, so any do permission, and we'll do permission book ID is equal to object ID. Finally, we have the author now being returned from that. So this is still returning us those author information. It's just now returning us one extra little thing. Oh, and the errors are not present. Okay. So that's our, finally our query is working, but our little GraphQL helpers that we built towards the start of the session. If result errors not nil. I'm treating it like an array, but it's when it actually works, it's not nil. If it's not nil, any. And okay. This will try and run both checks with an and. Oh, I'm doing user 3. User 3. Okay. Should be reader 3. Yeah. Okay. Getting towards the end of our session today. This is missing an ID attribute for readers. So when I defined the reader entity over here, I didn't include in user IB. Okay. ID types. I'm not sure why I need to define it there. Do I need to define it over in like book? Yeah, okay. Strange. The reader 1 JSON that's being returned is not in the right shape there. Let's see why not. I'm guessing it's not finding it. Yeah. So the reader's data that's being returned. Yeah, I'm not returning the ID out of that data. So when we return this, we're not returning the ID. And I'm not returning it here either. Oops, and the author is not only if they have permission, but if the permission author is true. Good to write a test to try and catch that case too, so that second user does have permission to read the book, but they aren't an author on the book. So what this is now doing is it's returning a list of reader information, and it's getting that reader permissions. We're doing some manipulation here to get out the permissions for the reader, and checking to make sure that the book that the permission object is for is the book that we're trying to get the list of readers from, and that they are an author. Okay, I'm happy with that query. I think that will work quite well. So I'm going to take this query, and we're going to go back to the front end now, back to readers, and I'm going to shove that query right here. I can do that because GraphQL is really nice like that. So we go to front end, and we go yarn GQL CodeGen. In fact, we'll need to dump the schema from the back end because we've changed that too. So schema dump. Oh, rake. You're breaking me, rake. All right, dump that. Run yarn GQL CodeGen. That works perfectly. So now this data that we're getting back out is ID and author, and we have the list of authors. So now we kind of want to only show that information. You can see here now this is actually returning author as well. And we kind of only want to return author here, kind of like this. That's ugly too. You know what? Const author suffix, which is like this bit of code here, and this, and it's a fragment, and then happy. What I want to return is like that. So I kind of want to return it only if the author for that is present. So author and author suffix. And we're not getting author out of that information, so author there. Okay. This error is happening on our API because we haven't restarted our backend server for Twist yet. And I'll restart it right now, and we should be okay. So now we get it. There we go. We have a way of indicating the that I'm the author of the book, and these users are not. The final thing that we were going to do today is make sure this page doesn't actually display for those users that don't have permission. So the final thing is like if a user visits this page, they shouldn't be able to like see basically any of this information. So that is in invite index, which is this one here. They shouldn't be able to click that and view this page. I don't know necessarily if we'll have time for that today. And we need a way of like hiding that link. So I think, you know what, I think just because we're coming up on time today and because it's been a bit of a long session, we've got 2 minutes left. Probably not going to have enough time, but tomorrow what we'll do is we'll look at, next time I mean, what we'll look at doing is we'll look at making, like hiding this page, having a permission denied thing render. So that will look something like, nope, permission denied, that. And we'll import that, there. So if a person tries to visit this page, they'll see like an error like, you do not have permission to see that book, or something along those lines. And we'll hide this link if the user is not an author. I think we could probably do that next time. And it's just a bit long today. There you go. That is inviting a reader. We've got this reader's type. You know, one more thing I reckon we could do. I'm not quite necessarily happy with the fact that this is like user repo and then it returns a bunch of readers. So reader repo is probably what we can do. That's one last thing we can do. So the where do we see it? We saw it in relations, I think. Not quite relations, schemas, I think it was. Schemas defining a different name. No, I don't think it was under combines. It's like a way of saying schema. Schema, the name for this association is something else. The name for the schema is something else. Maybe we saw it in the ROM code base. Like, schema, blah. Okay, looks like we can just define it like that and then we'll get the right thing. So, two things we need is we need readers, RB. This then does the same as this sort of thing. Hey, there's a timer. Almost there, timer. We're almost done. It's the schema it uses. Look, I'm already doing it. So readers is this, it uses that. We want the readers. The reason I'm doing this is because I want this logic to exist only for readers. I don't want it to exist for users. So we can then take this logic out of users and tidy this up a little bit. We can take this logic out of users, tidy that up a bit. And I think, in fact, what we can do here is we can probably even do like a combine permissions, I guess, I reckon, where that is that. And the great thing here is that we have that users repo spec, here, which we can rename to readers repo. What did I call it? That's relations. I guess it would be reader repo. And the yeah, we still want to do a subject, and subject by book is fine. Rename this to reader repo. And then over in repos, we define a new repo, which is pretty much the same as this. So it's reader repo.rb. And for readers, we only want to get them by the book. And look, I'm doing this combined thing here. That's probably wrong. I think that's probably better in the, oh, and this looks like it uses, that's the relation name, reader repo by book. And we want to get out the readers by the book and map to the reader class, which I think we probably don't need to do anymore. Not sure. Okay, we will double check what that is doing by doing a reader repo spec. Uh-oh, I renamed that file wrong. This one needs to be reader repo and spec. I renamed the file but didn't rename the command I was running. Relation with name users registered more than once. Okay. It's probably this one. It is, where it doesn't show me where it's being registered more than once at the moment. Reader repo. User, readers, schema users. I still feel like that has a different name somewhere here. Like, yeah. Oh, as users, that's probably what it was. As provides the registered name. So that's what I want. So schema users, that users is the dataset name, and readers, that's what I was looking for. Readers is the name that it gets registered with. So there. And now that doesn't have a way to create readers. The reader repo doesn't provide ways to create, so we do this, which allows us then to create readers, which have information underneath them if we want to. Although, you know what? I don't reckon we want that there. We want the reader repo spec. I'm going to wrap this up soon. Promise, promise, promise. We want this to be user repo and user repo and then user repo, like that. And then the subject is a reader repo. So we create the book permissions in that, and the author is missing in this. No, it's not missing in that. I'm passing it through. Oh, permission new. So when we get back the permission, you know what it is? I haven't run the migrations on the test database, I don't think. And reader repo. by book, that is readers, where I think this needs to be, we have another syntax for this. Sort of like, where permissions book ID is that? Very close. Probably where we're using a join somewhere else. Yeah, that, books, that syntax. One day I'll remember what the syntax is. Just because I haven't been using it as long as Rails, like that's really the main thing here, is that ROM is easy to use once you know the syntax, just like Rails. Rails is easy to use once you know the syntax. And I think what we want to do here is probably join permission. Alright, I think that's enough for today. I will fix up that spec, and you'll see a passing build next time you tune in. Thank you everyone for watching. I appreciate it.